As a quick reminder, this channel is now called Time for AOB. I did another video and I explained why. AOB means any other business. And there are some things that are at the core of this channel. One, we are dedicated to making leaders because we believe good leadership will make people go far. Number two, we are dedicated and committed to discovering talents in people, both young and old. And lastly but not least, we are also dedicated in providing resources to support, to nurture these talents and the leaders that we have already made. And that when we do that, we ensure that the society we live in progresses as one. And in our AOB today is a book, Gossip. I talked about this book. This is what we call Tuesdays with Moliere. An old man, a young man, and life's greatest lessons. Written by Mitch Albom. But now, even before we talk about the content of this book, it's first of all good to know that this is one of books that have been a bestseller for around 4 years consecutively from the time it was published. It was published in 1997 by Doubleday. And why have I picked this book? To give way for the AOBs that will be touching on books, book gossip. This is a memoir. This is a memoir. It's the story of a man who is dying. A man called Moliere Chiwot. He was a sociology professor. And he was suffering from a disease called ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a very terrible disease of the neurological system. And it was after an interview or kind of conversations between him and his student. And the most interesting thing about this student, this Mitch Albom, was that after graduating from the university in 1979, he promised his professor, the old man, the sick man, that he would be visiting, he would be checking on him. But now 16 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 16 years, he never reached out to this professor. He never communicated. He never sent any email. He never sent any phone call. He did bad. Until one evening when he was surfing or changing from one channel to another. And then he came across a channel called ABC TV. And there was a show called Nightline. And there was an interviewer there, a celebrity called Ted. And he was interviewing this old man. And along within that discussion, Moliere admitted that he was dying. He was dying. Only 2 years left for him. And Mitch Albom, at the comfort of his house, felt so bad inside of himself. He was guilty. He felt guilty. And he wondered something, what could he do for him? And he did a number of things. And one of the things that he decided to do was to write this book. And the main purpose why he wrote this book was in order to help his professor settle the medical bills. Because, as you know, this disease, Lord Gerus, I don't know whether you have pronounced that word correctly. You can Google search ALS disease and you discover it is a terrible disease, terminal disease. If you contact it today, you have at most 5 years to enjoy the goodies of this world, including also maybe some disappointments here and there. But this is life. But for our good Moriel, at the time of this interview, he had only 2 years left. And then it hit Mitch Albom so hard. Why does it concern us today, 25 years later? Okay, point number one is that most people are praising this book, including me. And I have read this book 2 times. And every time I read this book, I get a new idea that helps me to be a better person moving forward. It will never frustrate you. It will never frustrate you. This short book. You'll cry, you'll shed a tear. It might be literally, or inside you feel something. Unless your heart is made of stones. You also laugh because the storytelling techniques of Mitch Albom are so interesting. But that aside, let's look at Mitch Albom now. This student who had graduated in 1979 for 16 years, having promised his professor to be keeping in touch, but then he never kept the promise until the very end of his professor's life. Then his eyes got opened up. Look at Mitch. Mitch is just another ordinary man like we have today. Mitch Albom was a successful, a celebrated sports journalist, sports commentator. Yes, he had all those. He had awards. He had money. He had possessions. Everything. Because to him, to be a success means having all these things. But then his life, he felt it was empty until he reconnected with his dying professor. This time not in the formal sense whereby you go to class, you get an exam, you pass a certificate, stuff like that. No. This is now the real thing at the end of life. Lessons taught from experience. Lessons taught from experience. We do the same things even today. And something quite interesting that also happens in the Tuesdays that Mitch keeps visiting this professor is that there are other people who are also visiting this professor, courtesy after hearing that nighttime interview in that TV show. And everybody, after entering the room where Mitch where his health was deteriorating every day, they would enter there to give hope to this man, to give him everything. But what happened? As they left, Mitch observed most of them were shedding tears, most of them were crying. And it disturbed him to some extent. And in one of the Tuesdays, he decided to ask the professor about it. And this is the statement that I want to add today in this video. And this statement from this professor was a turnaround as far as the life of Mitch Albom was concerned. Listen to what this professor told Mitch Albom as a reply. He said, "Taking just makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living." That statement alone made Mitch Albom reevaluate his life. And immediately and moving forward, he started his philanthropy and manner of activities to help people and those activities succeeded a lot. Other than this book being a bestseller through the word of mouth, after being rejected by so many publishers, Mitch Albom went ahead to publish many other books. So what am I trying to communicate to you today? As a reader, as a person who thinks in terms of talents, as a person who wants the best, not just for himself or herself, but also for other people close to him, that it's not too late. You can use the best of the time that you have. Morier had only 2 hours left. Not 2 hours, sorry. 2 years, less than 2 years left. But he gave out his knowledge. He gave out his experience generously to Mitch, recorded and later wrote the book. And 25 years later today, we are talking of a timeless wisdom left by a sociology professor. Mitch Albom, the author, after looking for worldly wealth for 16 years without caring about what other people think or are doing, he comes into contact with this professor. And also within a few years, there's some impact due to the activities that follows henceforth. So it's not too late. It's not too late. And Tuesdays with Morier, an old man, a young man, and life's greatest lessons by Mitch Albom has proven us right. Do have a nice time, and remember to subscribe if you have not subscribed. And if you find it okay to do it, just let me know that you have added yourself a subscriber through maybe email or WhatsApp. Thank you so much. This is Samuel Warago. Thank you.